Hey guys, this is Andrew with High Level Reviews, and today I'd like to take a look at Grandia 3. The game was released in North America in 2006 on the PlayStation 2 and was developed by Game Arts and published by Square Enix. Grandia 3 had some large shoes to fill, as its predecessors were considered, and are still considered, to be RPG greats. Grandia 3 focuses on Yuki, a boy whose tenacious efforts to become an accomplished pilot and meet the legendary Sky Captain Schmidt often place him in trouble with his conspicuously youthful mother, Miranda. Yuki has crashed 18 planes at the onset of the story and is doing everything to ensure that his next creation will succeed. His partner Rotz eventually helps him get his plane off the ground, and everything seems to be great, until his mother pops up from the back and causes the plane to crash due to it being overburdened. As they are crashing, they spot Alfina. Alfina is a communicator, which are people capable of communicating with enormous creatures called guardians. She is being tracked by various miscreants, and Yuki decides to protect her and accompanying her on her journey to Arca Sanctuary. The rest of the game follows Yuki and Alfina, and whoever happens to be in your party at the time, across the world as Alfina attempts to seek out the different guardians and put an end to her brother Emilius's destruction. Emilius shunned the communicator's calling and is instead determined to destroy the guardians. Grandia 3 might be harsher and darker in tone earlier in the game than previous titles, but the story is so linear and single-minded that many characters feel flimsy or cliched. That isn't to say that they lack charisma or charm, though. I ended up becoming a little more invested in some of the characters because of how humorous and genuine many of the early exchanges are. And though I typically despise cheap or contrived narrative-pushing devices, the roundtable discussions were fun and, though sometimes a bit protracted, enabled the player to see the closeness of the group and the developing relationships. It also portrayed some of the stereotypical characters in a more humorous and interesting way than I anticipated. Unfortunately, due to the dearth of side quests or any distracting activity whatsoever, the game starts to drag a bit about halfway through and ends up feeling less and less inspired as the game progresses. When juxtaposed with previous Grandia titles, it's just too straightforward and black and white of a tale. There's not much nuance to speak of. I wish the game had been given more time because the opportunities for involved and exciting side quests, which might have further developed interesting characters, are many, especially with the game's early focus on aviation. It still contains many heartwarming moments and breathtaking visuals of the imposing and beautiful guardians. I never thought a goat could look so majestic. If you prefer to see characters go through major transformations or question everything about their quest and existence, this probably won't do much for you. It's not that the characters don't have interesting backstories or complicated perspectives, it's just that the decisions made by some party members to accept people into the group or to go on a quest aren't sold to the player outside of forced situations and exceptionally do what is right themed dialogue. Again, it has charm, but it just sticks close to the vest and doesn't take too many chances or stray from RPG tropes. The Grandia series staple returns in combat with a system that uses icons that represent your characters and monsters on the field, all rotating around a circle that shows the order in which they will take their turn. And the circle was changed from a straight line in previous titles. Any action you input must take into account the distance of your enemy and whether or not they are preparing a large attack. This system heavily, and I do mean heavily, emphasizes canceling attacks and chaining attacks on that monster if possible, though the cancel is often more important than chaining because of how devastating the large attacks can be. There are certain special powers and spells that can cancel or delay a large attack by a monster. Even grunts can pose a threat if you ignore this aspect of combat. It's a wonderfully strategic and frenetic system that infuses life into every encounter. The better you get at canceling, the more rewarded you are for it. If you avoid taking any damage, you get a nice boost in experience. The boss battles are also truly challenging. They are long and often keep you on your toes as you try to balance damage and canceling and healing all at once. The player gains magic abilities by finding eggs and extracting them, or purchasing the often overpriced ability from a shop, and you gain special powers by simply using them in battle. You can even level up individual special powers by using them under certain conditions. You can also gain very useful passive abilities by finding and extracting skill books. My only gripe, and it isn't a major or game-breaking issue, is that after you've extracted an ability or spell, you must access the save menu or find a shop to assign specific characters' passives or spells. It's rarely an issue, but it can be a major nuisance in some of the longer dungeons. Simply put, combat in this game makes experiencing Grandia 3 worth it. If you're at all interested in challenging and involved combat, this game will not disappoint. As I stated earlier, There simply isn't much else to do in the game. It's a shame because there are obvious parts where side quests were under development but had to be removed due to time constraints. And these weren't pretty removals. The traces of these quests are obvious in the world and sometimes end up hurting immersion during breaks in cutscenes that were intended for you to be interacting with objects that no longer work or exist. Navigating Yuki's plane, when he finally gets one, is a blast, but it's just not frequent enough and you have no reason to stay in it any longer than necessary. Even an inconsequential collecting quest or minigame would have been welcomed. That's not to say the game can't survive without them, it just would have significantly enriched the experience. The game is graphically impressive. From in-battle animations and character models to larger-than-life guardians, Grandia 3 was a treat to look at. Mikitaka Kurosawa, who also worked on Onimusha, produced the cutscenes. A Square Enix representative claimed that there are roughly 3 movies worth of cutscenes in the game. I don't know about that, but I will say the quality of the cutscenes is superb. Musically, series veteran Noriyuki Iwadari worked on Grandia 3, and with the exception of the opening song by Miz, a J-pop singer, everything seems to fit perfectly. I didn't find those few standouts that I found in previous titles, but it wasn't bad. Just didn't have the effect of making me leave the game on to listen to the music like other games in previous Grandia titles have. The voice acting is also actually quite impressive. There are a few Guardians that I felt could have had different voice actors, but not because they weren't skilled, but because the voice simply didn't match the creature. That's a minor and highly subjective complaint, so I didn't get too worked up about it. The voice acting in certain early scenes went a long way in adding to the comedic value. Had they not been as skilled, the deliveries wouldn't have been so perfect. Though some of the game's shortcomings seem pronounced enough to turn people away, what Grandia 3 does well, it does exceptionally well. It's one of a handful of games that removes the frustrations of grinding by using a system that challenges and rewards you in every fight. And though the story isn't conceptually challenging, it's taken a bit too much heat, I think. It's certainly cliché, but it's still charming and fun. I'd definitely give this one a shot. It's not the classic the first two are, but it's a solid RPG. If you enjoyed the review, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. This has been Andrew with High Level Reviews, and I appreciate you guys stopping by.